Sup peeps, Rockskull here. The highly requested TLC rework for the Araneo has finally come to fruition. I wanted to make a quick video going over all the changes since there are a lot, as well as the consequences of the changes, so you can become the Spooderman master. Araneo's got a completely updated model, with the most notable features being around the face. They now have these completely black eyes, and mouths that look a lot more like an actual spider. Little tufts of hair, also known as seta, common on invertebrates, are also added. Their body structure overall was made a tad flatter too, likely to fit the new saddle better. Before we talk about the saddle, though, I wanted to go over color regions real quick for you breeders out there, as they are completely different for the reworked Araneo. Region 0 is the base body as usual, Region 1 changes the big scoots located on the spider's back, Region 2 changes the underside, Region 3 seems to be unused, Region 4 changes the fangs, web shooter, tips of the legs, and the leftover spots on the back, and finally Region 5 changes all the leftover parts of the base, and the seta. If you're wondering about the aberrant Araneo variant, it looks like the spots that change in Region 4 are the ones that glow a bit. Now to the saddle, it also got a complete overhaul. It's given this really cool spider theme, and now the player doesn't look like they'd get back problems when riding it. Their movement locomotion is changed here too. It's a lot more stiff and spider-like, instead of having that weird motion that'd move its whole body. They did an interesting move with the Araneos taming method, where they actually changed it to a basic knockout tame, and I honestly really like it. Before they had this annoying method where you needed to get close to them with bug spray, and shove spoiled meat up their bum before they got mad at you, which from my experience they just always got mad at you. Now, especially with their low torpor, they are honestly a really easy tame. In terms of spawns, by the way, they spawn in the same locations they would before, like on the island, usually in these specific caves. Important to note, they can spawn hanging from the ceiling now too, instead of only on the floor. Once you find the one you want, just knock them out, give them spoiled meat, and you got a happy spider boy. If you want to use the best of the best taming food with kibble, superior kibble and up seems to be their preferred type. Anything below that, you'll just lose taming effectiveness. Additionally, it seems just like before, these guys won't accept prime meat at all, but will take normal raw meat, and fish meat. These take a lot longer though, and you'll lose a lot of taming effectiveness, so I wouldn't recommend it. Araneo's got some pretty nice buffs to their base stats too I wanted to go over real quick. Important to note that the stats I mentioned are the base level 1 ones, and these will scale with levels greatly. They now have 50 more health, 50 more stamina, 50 more weight, and 300 more food. Additionally, they did a similar thing with melee and buffed its base damage by plus 50%. This makes it around 15 damage base instead of 10. Now we get into what is probably the biggest part of this rework, and that's their new abilities. We have a lot to go over here, but we'll start with the base kit stuff. Note that when I talk about what buttons to press here, I will be calling them by their keybinds in the settings, instead of the specific button they are on PC, so the console players out there don't get too confused. If you want to know your specific buttons, the game will tell you on the right side when riding the Araneo. Araneos now have a jump, lateral movement, and by pressing crouch while riding, can fully climb up walls and ceilings. Importantly, unlike other wall climbing creatures like the rock drake, Araneos regenerate stamina while climbing a wall or ceiling. They also gain this ambush buff where, if you jump off a wall, your next attack within 5 seconds will do plus 50% more damage, and apply maximum web stacks. Webbed is a new mechanic similar to the old one where it slows targets, but on top of that, it reduces the web target's attack speed, increases incoming damage, and it now stacks. Maximum stacks make it so the target cannot sprint or jump at all. To apply webbed, you can just use the normal melees, or you can use the reworked web shot. The web shot attack can now be aimed by pressing your alt fire button, then shot with your primary fire button. There are 2 different modes with the webs you can change by holding the reload button. One is the normal web shot, which is damage focused, and the other is the poison web shot, which inflicts torpor to knock out creatures. Both these modes scale with the melee damage stat, meaning you can increase the amount of damage and torpor you do just by increasing melee. Araneos now also have a web tether ability that can be used for a wide variety of things. First, you have to enable it by pressing secondary fire and your crouch button combined. Then, you aim the tether by pressing secondary fire, and shoot with primary fire. It can be thrown onto creatures, or on the environment to create a tether you'll start hanging from, as long as the angle is right. You can ascend the tether with the jump button, and descend by pressing the prone button. If you are attached onto a creature, ascending with it will actually bring the creature towards you if it is small enough. Otherwise, you'll just go towards it normally. Upping the weight stat on your Araneo increases pull strength. Pressing the melee/pistol whip button detaches you from the tether. The tether also seems to just break if attached to a creature that's going too fast. While on the tether, you gain the ambush buff I spoke about before, you can melee, and you can even switch modes and do the web shot. This in particular is a great way to get an angle to knock out creatures. Another fun thing you can do while tethered to the environment is create a zipline. First, make sure you are still in tether mode while on a tether, and then shoot another tether a decent distance away by pressing secondary fire, then primary fire like before. As long as it has line of sight of the previous tether, this will create a functioning zipline. It will last 30 minutes, and you can create up to 3. You can climb up and down it with the Araneo by pressing the jump button, and you can go down it with just your player 2 without needing anything. If you want to go up it, however, you'll need a zipline motor, which I can confirm works with this too. I can also confirm it works with other zipline users like Ravagers. One of my favorite recently discovered features is being able to tether creatures to the environment and player-built structures. Do this by tethering onto a creature, then onto somewhere in the environment. Tether will break fairly quickly, but this will just launch the creature in that direction. This doesn't seem to have a size limit either currently, which allows for some hilarious interactions, as long as you have the weight stat to actually pull the creature. This can actually be very helpful, though. Get a wild creature you want to a more favorable location. Those are the main abilities, but some additional smaller ones are that it can farm silk off web creatures, and it now has a turret mode. With all the changes laid out now, I wanted to go over the consequences this makes to the PvE side of the game, because they are pretty huge. For one, the northwest, central, upper south, lower south, swamp, lava, and northeast caves on the island were made a lot harder with this rework, as well as the caves on Scorched Earth, and most of the other non-canon DLC maps. These spiders can now jump you from the ceiling, and with their webbed attack, will make you take increased damage, while slowing you even more than before. Something I realized about the hanging spiders in caves, by the way, they'll just constantly shoot range attacks at you, and won't jump down unless you shoot them, or are right beneath them. I assume their ambush buff applies while they are doing this too, so they will be doing some pretty crazy damage to you. Make sure to bring some kind of ranged weapon when doing any of those caves. I can also confirm from testing that the Broodmother fight is pretty dang ridiculous with these new Araneos. With the Araneos constantly webbing your army, you'll be taking increased damage from the Broodmother, which can be devastating if you aren't prepared, as the Broodmother can do a pretty insane amount of damage. Additionally, they did a pretty fun addition of having Araneos constantly web you while hanging from the ceiling like they do in the caves. Before, I did already think the Broodmother was underrated in terms of strength, but you could still get away with running basic Rex rushing strats, since what she did was so basic. Now, however, it's going to be a crap ton more difficult. With Rexes already being slow and big, they will constantly get webbed, which will make it really difficult for them to even pincer the Broodmother for this fight. This makes me believe now there's really only two main strats you can run. First is their Xenos with veggie cakes, as their smaller build and higher mobility makes them slightly better overall in my opinion. They can also tank a lot more than a Rex can with the veggie cakes. Additionally, the Megatherium strat feels like a bit more of a requirement now. If you didn't already know, Megatherium get a 4x boost for killing any bug, so any Araneo that gets in their path will get destroyed. However, an additional note here is that I would highly recommend bringing a ranged weapon for this fight now while doing the Megatherium strat, as you'll want to knock those Araneos on the ceiling down to help your Megatherium get their boost. Speaking of bosses, an additional change I didn't see mentioned in the patch notes is that Araneos cannot be teleported to most boss arenas now, as I'm guessing the wall climb ability would be too busted for most of these, similar to why the Thyla can't be brought to most. Luckily, just like the Thyla, they can be brought to the Aberration Rockwell Arena. With all these changes out the way, you might be wondering about my personal thoughts on this TLC, and overall, it's pretty dang positive. I love the visuals, and in terms of gameplay, I knew they couldn't go too overboard with it, as Araneos are such an integral part to the game's PvE. I think they almost found the perfect balance here with not buffing their base stats too much, but instead making them a lot more utility based. I do think they got a little too scared to buff the base stats as I mentioned before, because their health stat in particular is still pretty abysmal. But overall, I am really happy with the changes. They have this unique niche with their really good mobility, as well as being a really solid ranged attacker. The torpor they do doesn't mess around either, making them a very worthwhile thing to tame in the early game, especially with how easy they are to tame. That's everything I have to say about the Araneo though. You can let me know in the comments what you think of this TLC rework. Thank you all for the support as always, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Rock skull. All you want to do is stream all night. Lobby full, rock skull. Never gonna play with me, but it's alright.